Hi, I'm Pam, the Messenger of Love. Welcome to my Shine From Your Soul YouTube channel. I'm going to be bringing you more of these spirit videos, so if you are interested in me communicating to a certain spirit, go ahead and send me an email at info@pambyers.com. You can get that information about my email and my website in the description below. And if you subscribe to this channel, hit the notification bell, because then you'll receive that notification that new videos are coming out, and you'll know when they're first coming out and be able to watch them right away. And there's going to be a lot of cool videos. I want to thank y'all for joining me today. Today we're going to talk to Edgar Cayce. So I have communicated with Edgar Cayce before, and I've had a little bit of a dialogue with him, but I haven't talked to him in a while, so I thought this would be interesting to bring him in and see what he has to say about his life, and also maybe he can give us a little insight into how he did his work, and maybe what his perspective is now on the other side, if he can tell us a little bit more about how he sees it from the spiritual vantage point. So as we're talking to Edgar Cayce, he's going to begin to bring in messages, and first we'll see what he has to say in general, what his messages are, and then we'll ask him some questions. And then at some point I'm going to pull some cards, and then at the very end maybe we'll receive a channeled message from him as well. So with his presence here right now, one of the things that I want to note to everyone is that when I see spirits coming through, usually I'll get a feeling of them or a sense of something. Maybe they'll give me a word or something like that. But a lot of times I'll see an imagery, so I'll see them maybe sitting down in a chair, or they're wearing certain clothes, or they have something that's like a symbology, whether they have flowers or something else. So right now, Edgar Cayce is sitting in a chair, but it's like he has this notebook that he's writing in. So it's like he's taking notes. And he's also wearing kind of like a suit or something, like more formal. He's dressed more formal, and he's got this notebook that he's writing in. So he says he's taking notes because to him, he wants you to know that he was always learning. In his experiences, whether he was investigating or reading something, or he was actually working with clients, or, doing his work, going into trance, he was always learning during those experiences. So it's not like he came in and he didn't allow that to happen. No, he came in with his gifts, yes, and that's true. He does acknowledge that he came in with a stronger sense of knowing, and it was just kind of turned on. For him, it was there, like, even though it didn't get used until a little bit later in his life, it actually was there already. It was going to happen. It was just not quite available to him earlier on. For whatever reason, it just didn't have its opening, if you will. So he's saying that he definitely came in with bringing in his gifts from other lifetimes. He refers to things like Atlantis, Lemuria. There was other places that he was, where he was either on the earth or other dimensions, and so he was bringing in all of these different pieces of knowledge, and how to tap into energy and read energy, and how to use your psychic gifts and things like that. So he was coming in. It's interesting, one of the things that he mentions is he was coming in as kind of a seer in a way, but it came through maybe a little differently than some of the other people that were maybe following the psychic path. But he's saying he came in as a seer and a knower, and that seeing and knowing came from another life where he actually did do this. I see him looking at rocks or something. So I think in another life he did something where he used rocks to do some sort of predictions, and so he would like gather these rocks and do something with them, and then that would show him what the energy was of stuff that was going on, and what if people had like a question, or if he had a question, he could answer it that way. So he had some of those talents that were coming through, even though he may not have used all of that this time, but that was part of it. And so he's taking notes now, just showing y'all that he's still learning even now while we're talking with him. He's still being the student. He doesn't want people to see him as being so far up there as a teacher or some kind of master energy that he can't be like everybody else and be one of you, and show you that, we're all on our journey at different points in that journey, and we're all beginners in some way at something. There's always something you're a beginner at. And so that's what he's talking about, is he's just writing a lot of notes and being present and saying that, he can give us the answers to the questions that we ask him, and he's going to give us a lot of information. But he also wants all of y'all to use your own intuition to gather those answers too, because he can only give you what his perspective is, because everything's a little different. We all have that different point of view, and he's not going to give you one absolute truth, because technically that doesn't really make sense in the universe. There's always different realities and different truths. So he's just telling you what, from based on his lifetime here and other lifetimes, this is what his truth is going to be. And you can kind of take that in and decide what you want to do with it and make up your own version of what fits right for you, right? So the first thing he's going to talk about is he wants to talk about the work that he did helping people with healing and almost like working through trauma or something that was a little bit off. Like he almost describes himself as a mechanic in a way. Like if a mechanic's working on a car and there's something wrong, there's a part of the car that needs to be replaced or fixed for some reason, it's like you go in there and you just kind of slightly tweak something, you take something out, put something new in there, do a little adjusting, and then you end up with something that's almost like it's brand new, right? So he's saying that's how he felt his work was when he was working with people, giving them information and going into the trance state, or even just giving out healing information for, here, do this, eat this food, do this little technique, and this will change this disease pattern or whatever. He kind of knew what to do for each of those, because he saw them more as not conditions that were physical, but as this little misalignment or energy frequencies that were off. So that's how he saw it. His perspective was really, when he talked about all of these pieces of information, it's like his thoughts were ahead of his time in a way. Like he already was seeing how we could use what we had to change the energy and help people heal by shifting the frequency. See, like if you think about it, if there's a frequency and it's not in the right frequency, like it's something that is around surrounding disease, and if you can shift that frequency, then what happens is the physical body will follow, right? Or if it's the mental body that's affected more, then the mental body will follow that, right? So he was trying to show how if you could change the frequency, just the frequency, then that would begin to produce the healing. And some people it would happen sooner, some people it would take a little longer, based on how long they had been stuck in that frequency, or things that affected them to get them to that place, and whether that was still around them, whether they were open to receiving healing. He says that's a big thing. Like if people are not open to healing, if they're judging it, if they're pushing it away, if they're feeling like it's not true, it's not for them, then it probably is not going to happen, because you have to have the thought of the healing being possible for it to come through. And so with him, because he was tuned in to a lot of these answers, people trusted this more because they could see that other people were healing. So it's kind of like that thing where when you see something, you start to believe it more, right? And it's hard to believe things that you don't see. You kind of wonder if that miracle is really going to happen. But if you start to see the miracles happen in other people right in front of you, because they're following a certain piece of information, a certain, track for a healing technique or whatever it is, if you see them healing and they're talking about it and they're experiencing it, and you're like, oh man, I have that thing I need to work on. I have this particular ailment, or there's something that I'm mentally stuck in. Maybe I'm depressed or whatever it is. Well, maybe he can help me too, because I can see he's doing all this work. So see, it becomes this like wheel turning with this belief, this stronger belief system, and then people attach to that. So he says a really big part of it that didn't come out as much in his work is that the belief part has to be there in place. And if they don't have that belief, if they can't latch onto it, it makes it a little harder. They're going to struggle with it. They're going to go back and forth in their energy frequency, and they're going to, maybe even if they start to go towards the healing, they might kind of revert back to the disease state, because sometimes people, he says, sometimes people feel like it's almost like they don't deserve to be well, or they might need to be punished for something, or they have guilt for something, and they blame themselves for certain things happening. And all of those feelings of just feeling like there's something that you should be constantly punished for, or like you have to be put in prison in a way. You have to like experience pain. You have to experience pain when you go through this thing. You have to, in order to process through it. He says maybe you don't. Maybe you don't have to experience pain. Maybe you don't have to hold on to guilt. Maybe we're all human in this experience, right? And we do things not because we don't know what is right and wrong, that we're maybe a little bit more unaware of things, but maybe we do things because at that time that's the best decision we can make. And when you get a bigger picture and you go past it, you see the expansiveness of it, and that's when you can decide, oh yeah, that didn't work for me, now let me try this other thing. So he's just trying to explain how your perspectives are going to keep changing moment by moment. So don't feel bad if, maybe yesterday you had one perspective and you said something, and then you look back on it and you think, okay, I wish I wouldn't have said that. And then you start to carry that sense of guilt about it, or you blaming yourself for that, even for that one little thing, right? And he's saying, well, what if today you see it and you say, yeah, that wasn't so good, but today I'm in a different frequency, I'm in a different level of my awareness, and yesterday that's okay, I wasn't quite there, I didn't understand what was going on. I'm just going to not worry about that, because that was yesterday. Today is today. Today is a new day. Today I can have a different perspective and start to appreciate that I'm always evolving. I'm always getting more knowledge. And so that's really what he's talking about, is his knowledge just accumulating in him, allowing that to come through. And he also did that. He's showing me books. So it's like a library. And he's showing me that these books, he's able to access, the Akashic records in the library, if you will, on the other side. So he sees all of the things that he wanted to learn even in this life. He's really open to that now. He investigates that more. But even when he was here on the earth as Edgar Cayce, he really enjoyed books, is what he says. He feels like books were like kind of his best friends in a way. It was like his way of escaping from maybe parts of the physical plane that he didn't enjoy as much. And he felt like he was kind of a studious person, and he felt like that was his thing, that was his talent. Other than his psychic abilities, like he really engaged in learning and embraced it, and he really enjoyed that part of his life. He probably, if he had not done as much work with people, or done his predictions of things, or given psychic information, he might have been a philosopher or something like that. He might have been a professor of some kind, or someone that would work with knowledge more and help others learn. And he could have been a teacher. He says I could have been a teacher. And in a sense he was, but he's saying maybe on a different level. Maybe it was in a different place and way of delivery. So he does acknowledge that was something that could have been possible in his life as Edgar Cayce. And he's also talking about there's something to do with people were recommended certain things at that time, and he wants you to understand that as time goes on, as you are evolving and learning is coming forth and the scientific knowledge and all of these things, he really does appreciate the science. He says that you are getting more tools and ways of healing. So accept that. He says you can look through all of my materials and you can see something that will work for you. But remember, that was in the knowing at that time. That is where the consciousness was. So it has expanded beyond that now. And there's more of that awareness of what else might work for someone, or what other options there are for them to choose from. So he says, don't get stuck on in one moment in time when you know a piece of information. Keep gathering and keep searching and keep trying other things, because you will learn that on that path there is more healing by following different modalities. And so he's just acknowledging that we're in a different time where we do have a lot of alternative healing modalities. We have a lot of energy healing techniques. We can work with herbs. We can work with essential oils. We have homeopathy. There's a lot of nutrition and wellness avenues. And, you can go see a shaman. You can work with crystals. You can do chakra work. You can do all kinds of things. You can meditate and work on your meditations, and that clears out a lot of stuff. And he's going to talk about that right now. So that's why that came up. He wants to talk about meditations because in his state of being in a trance state like that, where he was pulling in information and connecting to a higher source, he wants to talk about how when you're meditating, what you're doing is, he wants you to visualize your energy, like you have this energy field, right? So when you're meditating, what you're doing is you're tuning into your energy field, okay? You're allowing yourself to kind of step out of your body a little bit, or at least not feel your body as much. So you can kind of get out of your mind thinking. You can let go of the notion that you have to be strongly attached within your body to where you're feeling everything. And then you just start to acknowledge your energy field and visualize it a little bit. And in that meditation state, what is happening is you're talking to that energy and you're connecting to it. And you're bringing it more into an alignment and kind of clearing it out a little bit. It's almost like you're taking your energy field and you're just like, like kind of doing this. Like you're doing something where, it's like where you brush your hair or something. Like you're just like clearing it off, right? And so he says that's one of the things you're doing. And you're also sometimes working with your chakras, obviously. And you may work with guides at times. You may work with your higher self. There's other ways that you tap into what realm you're going to work with. You might work with Atlantean energy and bring in knowledge at one of your meditations. So there's different things that'll happen there based on what you're working on at that time and what your overall physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual body states are. So let's say that you're really balanced mentally, emotionally, physically. Okay, so everything's good. You're taking care of your physical body. You feel like your mind's balanced. You're not feeling overly emotional. You're all good there. And then you have your spiritual body. So what he's saying is once your physical, mental, and emotional get more into an alignment, then you start to tap into your spiritual body more. And then that's when you work on that alignment. So he wants to say that it doesn't matter necessarily which one you work on first or tap into, because you'll go where you need to go. But just know that typically what happens is when those three levels, the physical, mental, and emotional, are more aligned, that's when you start to do more with your spiritual body, your spiritual connection, whatever your journey is there. So that's why you might not see it come in at other points in your life when maybe you're having a lot of stress, maybe you're physically tired, a lot of things are happening. At those points, you may not be able to tap in as much or feel that you can or feel balanced in that spiritual way. But don't worry about it, because when you work on clearing out stuff, if you're doing the meditations, you're working on doing some healings in different ways. He even brings up tapping. He says even tapping is good for people, because tapping is like you're tapping into the energy field again, right? And you're kind of hitting some meridians, and then you're in that process. What you're doing is you're trying to shift out things that might be stuck in that meridian and then like bring in something else instead. So it's like you're switching things around a little bit. It's kind of like if you put in a different light bulb. Like maybe you had a light bulb that was about to burn out, or maybe that you had one that was one color, you switched to another color or type of shade of light bulb. And if you switch the light bulbs, then that's what tapping and those type of clearing techniques do. Is it's almost like you're switching that program a little bit, just real quick, but not a big change, just a little change, but it's enough to get you out of something that you're stuck in, or something that is draining you, or that's affecting one of those bodies, either the physical, mental, emotional, or spiritual body. And he says what will happen is you'll have an awareness of which one is more important, because when you talk about something you struggle with, your words will reveal what it is, which layer is affected. So let's say that you say something to yourself like, I feel sad, or something like that. Well, you're definitely talking about your emotions a lot. It could affect your mental too, but when you're saying I feel, you're tapping into more of your emotional state. But then maybe you acknowledge instead something like, I worry too much, I think too much, I think that my life should be different. If you start to talk like that, then maybe you're tapping more into your mental body, and that means your mental body is a little imbalanced and needs to be brought back into balance. And so it just depends on what's going on. If you describe more physical ailments and you say, I'm in pain, or why am I always tired, or something like that, then that's more of your physical body. So whatever's your biggest struggle, if you say something like, I wish I could find the perfect job, you see, that could be more of your spiritual purpose, right? So that part might not be in alignment. It just depends on what it is that you are the most challenged with at that time. And it could affect multiple layers, really, but typically you'll go in one direction more than the other. In that moment, it'll be obvious that there's something that needs more work than the other parts. And so he says, always focus on that first. Whatever you feel drawn to go to, like if you feel drawn to go to a certain practitioner, if you want to try out a certain modality that you haven't tried out, if you want to learn something you haven't learned that would help you to do self-care, or if you just need to eat certain foods that you're drawn to, or maybe a certain type of exercise, whatever it is, maybe you're even drawn to go to therapy, hypnosis, any number of things. He says, let those things be there for you. Use those tools. Those people are there. People are there to help you. You're there to help each other. And there's modalities and things that you can do to get healing come in more. Of course, you can all heal yourselves. This is true. But notice how when you connect together, there's a stronger healing energy that comes in, because when you're in a weakened state, if you have been sick for a while, it can be difficult to do it on your own, because you don't have the energy reserves built up. And that's what he's trying to say. They're not built up. It's not strong enough. He says, one of the things I noticed is that if I had too many people that I was interacting with, I would get drained. And so I'd have to go and step away from it. And there was times where maybe he didn't actually always listen to that. Sometimes he did push himself too much because he really wanted to help a lot of people and do a lot of psychic work. So he didn't always get that recharging time to do that, to get reset. And he didn't necessarily take on people's stuff or ailments, but it's just that he was using his energy too much to help. Because even if you think about, like, let's say you're tapping into spirit and you're using spirit and you're trying to, channel or connect in a way that is using the energy from spirit rather than yourself, right? Well, even if you're doing that, you still have some drain, because you are a physical body. You do have your connection to the earth here. So there is some way that it does affect you a little bit, even if you are trying to get and connect to their energy and use them as you're the conduit and they're just coming through. So he's just saying, people that channel or do psychic work or healing work, they need to be more aware of the fact that they could be drained without realizing it at first. It might accumulate, and it's because not because they're not tapping in correctly to how to connect to source or guides or whatever they're tapping into for that healing. It's because the physical body is at a different vibration and can only handle so much of that vibration, and then it has to come back down, and then when it comes back down it has to integrate again into this physical frequency. So it's the coming down and the back and forth that causes that a little bit. And of course we are in the physical realm of needing sleep and rest and things like that. So he says you can't just keep pushing it and going on and on and on and on, and you can't be up 24 hours a day doing this work. You have to be more mindful and know that if you're a practitioner that is doing any kind of psychic work, channeling, healing, whatever that is, that you need to take a lot more time for self-care and downtime to have a quiet time away from all of that, and also decide how much time you're going to spend on doing these different things. Like, how many clients am I going to see, or how many healing sessions am I going to do per week or per day, or how many hours do I want to spend on that? That way you're not taking on too much from the get-go. You're already kind of setting your boundaries, and then that's what is in your world. You have that balance more, right? So he just wants to acknowledge that, we all need a little more balance. Now, I'm going to ask him how he got his information. How did he tap into that? How did he know he could tap into that? He says he would get these like prophetic dreams. So he would get these very vivid dreams, and that's where a lot of it started. He calls himself a dreamer, or kind of like an imaginary, like a big imagination kind of person. Like he had this, visionary, if you will. He was a visionary. He could see into the future, but how it like anchored to the present too. So he would like get information a little bit from the future, but then bring it back and say, well, what do we have within our earth space to create that? So he would make it more practical. But he definitely had a lot of visions earlier on. Even as a kid, he had a lot of things happen that were strange and unusual. And so I think he always had that way of being open to that, to allow it to come through, because he could see that he was different in a way. He didn't quite understand what it was going to turn into at first, but it definitely was something that was different. And then he says that when he was connecting in a way that he was, let's say he was in trance and he was, bringing in information and all of that. He says when he was doing that, that's when he actually felt more like home. It's like he would go to a place, it almost feels like he's going to a home base, if you will, kind of like a star system or something. And he would go there and he would be in kind of like a chamber or something. And it would just connect him to all kinds of knowledge. And I'm even seeing, this is very interesting because it's very advanced. So I'm almost seeing like technology and like some sort of computer information and downloads, and I don't know, it's kind of got a feeling of being in a computer program, if you will, but not one that's just determined by one pathway, that there's a lot of different options. So it's almost like he could go into, you know how you have like a flow chart and you go from like one point to the next based on the answers, and I think he was doing that somehow, and he was going to this other place. He would go to this system in this chamber or whatever it was, and then he would get downloads, and then he would kind of follow the path. It almost looks like it's lighted up, like it was a path of light, and he would kind of see where somebody needed to go and what the answers were, and then the answers would then come back down to his physical body to be, expressed in some way. But he was not aware of that happening because he was on the other part of being in that star system or whatever at the time. But he would go there, and then he would bring it down to anchor it to his consciousness in a way that he wasn't aware, and it would just come out through his voice and whatnot. So that's interesting. So he was definitely allowing something to come through. He also had some other master guides and beings that were working with him to give him the opportunity to be that vessel. So to help him to hold a certain frequency so he could do that work and get really good information for people, so that he was having that help as well. So it's not like he was just doing this by himself. And then he just kind of perfected it too from the physical plane perspective. He just knew how to get into that state and how to like let go, if you will. Like sometimes people struggle with the letting go part, and they're not able to get to maybe that really higher frequency enough to get the clear information. And he said it was really easy for him because he came in a way where he would easily travel, like in his dreams and stuff like that. So if you're a traveler, if you have that imagination, that's what's going to happen, is you're going to go out of your body more easily. And if you step out of your body easily in your dreams, you can also do it when you're meditating and whatnot. So he did that. In his trance states, he was able to get out of his body more, and basically he could use that tool, that the thing that he could do, his talent, right, and go and connect to these other places and get that information. So that's where that was coming from. And his purpose for being here was obviously to create this big shift in people, he's saying it's, to him, he doesn't even see it as a spiritual awakening so much as more of a healing awakening. So he wants to focus in more on that, even though he could have brought in, he may have mentioned other things psychically that he would give as information for people. But his number one love of that experience and what he enjoyed doing was the healing part. So he says his main purpose was to bring that big healing activation and expansion upon the earth for people to see that they could get this information, for now, and that in his lifetime, what was happening is he was getting it and he was gifting it to people, and so they were seeing that it could come through. So that was the first part of our consciousness expanding. But he says now we realize that we all can receive that, and so it's kind of evolved more past that. So at the time he was just showing people how the healing was possible if they believed and if they were open to it, and they could receive from a healer. But now he's saying it's leaning more towards you can be the healer. You are the healer. And that's where the consciousness has expanded and has grown and will continue to move towards, so that everybody realizes they can connect through meditation, through prayer, affirmations, whatever feels right to you. You can start to connect and bring that healing and bring your connection from the other side to receive the same information that he received. We all can receive that. And the only thing that keeps us from receiving that is our minds sometimes will block us, because we start to question whether we are receiving the right thing, or whether it is true or valuable, or if it's something that really will work. And we start to do that questioning thing. And he says that's what really stops people from healing, is they question too much. Remember, we have to go back to that believing thing. He says if you believe you can heal, then you will. If you believe that something will help you, then it will help you. It starts from that. And the key here is you have to hold on to that belief for a period of time, so that it becomes more and it grows, and it is this thing of kind of becoming stronger to where you're not letting it go. Like you're holding on to it enough that you don't even realize that you had another belief before. Like eventually you just believe, okay, yeah, it's true, and you don't question it anymore. There's so many things in life, like we believe in things that sometimes don't even make sense. Like sometimes we believe in things and there really isn't any, evidence of something. But it's interesting how there's certain things we're definitely certain about, right? And we believe them very strongly. And other things we're like, well, that hasn't happened to me yet, so I don't know if that's possible. But see, that kind of thought process is already taking you away from it being possible. So it's like, how do you keep bringing yourself back to, okay, anything is possible. Today is a new day. I can believe something beautiful and amazing and believe in miracles and all of that will come to me. How do you do that every day when there's things that are going against it at times? You know, other people may have different beliefs and they may go against it, or maybe something goes wrong and you're like, oh, I don't know if that's true now. How do we keep going back to that stronger belief? So we're going to talk to them about that right now. How can they hold the belief and not let it go so that they can create the healing? He's saying the secret is there's something within your heart that it's like there's a little light that is a spark of you that's more of the pure creation of you. So when you tap into that more, that's where you can hold it. So what he's saying is, if you start to have a false belief or thought or something that kind of questions where your miracles will go, right? Like, let's say you get the thought that, oh, that healing's never going to happen because it hasn't happened before. When you start to feel that, he says, draw yourself back to your heart space and pretend like you're just a newborn child, right? And you're just coming in the earth, and think about how we greet babies when they come in and how we see them so innocent, and we just hold them and we rock them and cuddle with them, and you know what I mean? Like, we give them that space to be just pure and innocent and just be pure love, right? And we love them in that way. And we don't judge them in any way whatsoever. He says, bring your heart back to that feeling. Pretend like you're seeing yourself and you're viewing yourself like an observer as being that innocent self, right? Now take that thought that you had and ask yourself, would you see your innocent self as holding on to that belief or thought that doesn't work, that irrational belief? Would you say that that matches that frequency of that innocence within you? If it doesn't match, then that means that it's not true and it doesn't need to stay there. But what is there, what you will find in that heart space that you have, is you will find the belief that I have just been born today and anything is possible because I'm a newborn, I'm innocent, I have that pure love, I can create anything. I have the whole world in front of me. Because it's funny how earlier in our lives, let's say we're younger, we have these dreams about things we're going to do, and we allow that to grow a lot more. We're like, oh, one day I'm going to be, I don't know, a musician, or I'm going to be a baseball player, or I'm going to be an artist or singer or whatever it is. We come up with all these different things. And then sometimes we learn more about ourselves and we decide, okay, there's something else that suits us more. But a lot of times what happens is we do have a true talent in one of those areas and we just put it aside because we start to see our talents through other people's eyes or other experiences. So when you're a kid, you have more of an innocent view and you're like, oh yeah, anything's possible. I'm going to be this. I just know it. But then somewhere along the line, people tell you things happen. Maybe you don't do so good at something in your life and you're like, oh, I don't think that's possible. That's just a dream that, is way out there and it's not going to be practical. It's not going to be on my path. We probably give up too soon sometimes, or we go into those ways of going into the false beliefs that take us to really a place that is not authentic with ourselves and not in our alignment. So he's just talking about that. Edgar Cayce, he's talking about how we get out of alignment a lot by listening to things that are not within ourselves. When we don't listen to ourselves, if we don't connect to our spiritual self, we don't get the full picture. So let's say we're just in tune with our physical body or our mental body. And that does give us information too. But if you're too much into the thinking mode, as an example, you're going to miss something there that brings that balance, that tells you this is what would feel right. This is what would be right. So you need to use your heart and your mind connected to make decisions and have that balance, so that when you are making decisions, it's coming from a place that's making your heart happy as well. If you ignore that place of your heart and you don't pay attention to it, and you don't fill that place in your heart by making these choices, then eventually you'll start to feel being out of alignment. You'll start to feel different ailments because your heart is not happy. And so that's what he wants to talk about there, is just being out of alignment causes you to, feel different physical symptoms or symptoms in the mental bodies and things like that. And then he's going to talk a little bit about his transition going to the other side. He says it was easy, and then he also says, and that's because of what he did and how he was always in and out of his body a lot. He says it was easy, but he also says it happened a little earlier than he thought it would, but he feels like he did do a lot of work, and of course he feels like he could have done more, but he definitely feels like he did a lot of work, and he appreciates all of that. And he does, come to help us at times with knowing a little bit more, through doing things like this, like channelings and things, but also he will do that sometimes when he is working with maybe like a healing practitioner, somebody that's a scientist, or, maybe they're a psychic researcher or something like that. He will kind of work with them to help them to get a higher knowing and begin to piece other things together. So that's something he's been doing from the other side. But he says it's basically his transition and what he experienced going into the spirit world. As he said, it was just exactly what I thought it was going to be. And then there's some other things that were added on, that was a little bit more beyond what his consciousness was at the time, but it was pretty much what he thought it was going to be like. And he really embraced it. He just felt like he went home immediately and just kind of went to that place where it's almost like when you go on a vacation, like Earth's the vacation, right? He's like, okay, I was on Earth on my vacation, and then I just went home. And it's that time when you go home and you've been away from home for a while, you just like kind of relax and you just feel like, okay, everything's good now. And so that's what he felt like. But he did, get a lot of information when he came over about the purpose of his life and what he did for people, and he could see a little bit more of the effects of that, because he knew that at the time, but he didn't know maybe how much it was, what level it was at. And then also he could continue to view that once he was passed and crossed over. He could see it even more, where people were still using that information and tapping into it. So he did appreciate that as well. So right now I'm going to tap into Edgar Cayce, and we're going to pull a couple of cards for him as well, so we can see more of what energy was around him. It's interesting, one of the cards that came out was alignment, and that's what he was talking about. He started to talk about that example of our energy being in alignment when we're following our path more, when we have our spiritual, mental, emotional, physical bodies balanced. So that's what he's talking about. Remember, he gave that example of the auto mechanic and how we can change something in the car, or maybe change the light bulb, and that changes what our alignment is and brings it back, kind of brings everything back into balance. Just think of alignment as following your path, and when you follow your path, and you have that balance, right? Because everything's happy, everything's good. So just keep doing that. If you felt like you've been out of alignment, if you've been imbalanced, keep following it, because it takes times a little longer sometimes to get it back. If you've been out of it for a while, if you've had a lot of stress, it can take a little healing time. And then he also had a card come up that was talking about awareness and just being more awakened. And he definitely was fully awakened and was bringing in information to help people in a way that they awaken as well. And if you look at a lot of the stuff that was left behind, because he's got all of these different trance sessions and psychic sessions that basically brought in information that's been compiled. He's definitely opened, if you think about this, if you look at the eye, he's definitely opened the third eye of society and expanded our consciousness. So that, allowed people, I think it almost gave them, he's trying to say, it almost gave them the permission to investigate more. Because before, it was almost like we were in this state before. The phase of the world was spiritual gifts and spiritual purpose was not as focused on. There was not that awareness of that part of our being as much. And that's because we weren't all in that consciousness shift yet. But then it began to be more, and he acknowledges there were others at that time too that brought that through. There were other psychics, other healers that were doing great work, that were doing that awakening as well. There was a group of them that were kind of in the same time period that had come down, and some of them did interact together and sometimes they didn't, but they were all a part of that group that came down to do that work. And then I pulled another card for life force energy. So this is interesting because he was talking a lot about the energy field and how we could use meditation and how we would use meditation to clear our energy field or tap into it or have some kind of awareness there. So it's interesting that card came out because that's totally what his path was. What he was doing is he was helping people get information so they could adjust their frequencies and their energy fields, basically, is what was happening. And then I also pulled a card called the Original Self. And so this kind of reflects on what he was talking about with, where he was saying go into your heart space to where that spark was, that original spark that was pure. That's exactly what that card is showing. So he connected to his own self that way. He wasn't trying to be somebody else. He was just being himself. He was just, every day just, okay, this is my gift. I'm going to use it fully to its potential. And so he's saying that was there very prominently for him. He never hid it away is what he's trying to say. He never put it aside or hide it from people or anything like that. He basically just let it be what it was. He's like, okay, here it is. Here's what I do. And he says, when you're authentic with people like that and you're real and you just follow that thing that is yours, they trust you more and they embrace you more and they get inspired by you more if you do that. Because sometimes you have to be different. Sometimes you have to be the one that's the first one to step out and say something or do something. And maybe it's something that's never been discovered before or talked about. And sometimes you have to be that person that's the first one that does it. And maybe you even stay in that space for a while where you're the only one doing. But eventually, it'll create this energy wave that opens up other people. And they maybe start to learn more about it or become interested in doing something with it. And then also he had a card that talked about union. And this is 44, by the way. And so there's something about the way that his life, when he's doing the psychic work and giving information, it was like he was creating this deeper union with souls all across the earth and maybe in other dimensions and whatnot. He was getting into this higher state. He used his third eye a lot, but he also did use his crown chakra as well. So I think he kind of used both, but his third eye was probably more prominent. And so he would go more out of his body and then the information would come through a combination of his crown chakra and third eye chakra. And then I pulled a card for peace. So this is definitely a higher consciousness card, a higher chakra card. And he even though he may have not talked about it that way, the work that he did brought a lot of peace to people. So it brought them that balance and peace so that they could go on with their lives and be healthy and feel good and understand their spiritual connection more, and be who they were, be okay, have good things happen in life. And I think what he's trying to say is he just brought a little bit of awareness to them, just a little bit of awareness that he brought in energetically, so that way they could then go into their own path and with their power, you see, like using their own power to make decisions. He was just bringing them that knowing so that they could follow that path and keep doing the healing work and keep being in alignment and all of that. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to receive a channel message from Edgar Cayce. So let's see what message Edgar Cayce has for us at this time. I'm going to bring in a channel message for you. There are a lot of synchronicities around you. Sometimes you call them circumstances or events, but I call them opportunities. Because it comes forward from your energy and your awareness within your energy, and how you may open up, kind of like the lotus flower. And your energy is always growing and shifting and evolving. And you are always learning and bringing a stronger version of that knowing within you. Your pathway is what you create from your curiosity. So when you are curious about things and you wish to learn, and you are seeking that balance and that place of peace, that is what guides you to follow your real, authentic path. Because you are accepting in that place. See, acceptance is key, because when you accept yourself as you are, in every moment, just the way you are, nothing more, then you're allowing that opening to happen. You're allowing those higher frequencies to connect to you. You're allowing for things to be true for you. You're allowing for greater wisdom to come through. And that wisdom is not just from your experiences on the earth. It is from all of your lifetimes, all of the places you have visited, from your higher self, your spirit guides, and elevated beings that wish to work with you. And you may trust this, and you may see yourself soon move into a higher consciousness and awaken further and become more in the light and more aware of where you need to go and what you need to do to bring in that balanced energy, to attune your energy field to what feels right to you, to bring in that higher frequency of light and let it be a part of your life. Absorb that feeling more into the physical plane. Allow it to travel to this plane and be integrated so that you may receive it more. The healing comes from within you. If you are seeking healing, it begins with that first thought. It's like a seed of light. That first thought builds and grows. How easy it shall be for you to heal when you believe that you are the healer and that you may guide your energy in this direction to receive the ultimate healing frequency, to be in that pure state of love, to be in that resonance, that place where you are going back to your beginning frequency, the one you came in when you were born and you have forgotten at times. It is so easy to be distracted by things that are not of the light. But I ask you to come back to the light, to appreciate the light, to grow the light, to be the light. And the more that you feed into that light, the more that you put that thought of love and happiness and peace within that light, the more you will see those opportunities for spiritual growth, for mental balance, for emotional stability, for physical wellness, and for very long, beautiful lifetimes with many memories and experiences that feel like you are walking on the clouds in heaven. Know that you may tap into my knowledge, you may meditate with me and bring me forward, and I will give you the answers for your healing. Simply ask for me to come forward in your meditations and ask your question, and then I will bring you the answer when you're meditating, so that you know the next step upon your journey. You may do this as many times as you wish. Whatever you need is available to you. Do not block the door for spirit to come through. Allow it to open. Gently at first, peek through and see what is there. But then allow that doorway to be more open. Allow that guidance to come through and that light to shine through and be a part of you more. For you are all light beings, you're all spiritual beings. That is your first connection. Know that within my knowledge and what you've experienced, all the information that I have upon the earth, it is in a sacred place, in the records, the great library, where all of you can access it. Even if you cannot access the physical version of my information, you can tap into this greater library to receive what you need. And know that this is always changing as you are adding to this library, and all of you are discovering things. Many healers and scientists are putting new discoveries into this library, and you may access that too. And choose what feels right to you and where you feel you need to go within that library, and you will know that that is where your healing lies. So let's use our imagination. If you travel into that library right now and you pick a book upon the shelf, what book do you choose? Does it have a topic, a specific subject? If it's for your healing, is it about using nutrition or herbs, or maybe using meditations or other energy healing tools? Focus in on what that is. Whatever book you chose in the library, that is the first one that you need to go to receive the wisdom and the answers for your healing. You know what to do. You're just awakening what is within you, that divine understanding that knows how to heal. Thank you for being present with me and allowing me to come in this space and be a great guide for you at this time in a different way. And embrace everything that is coming to you, as new discoveries will be made, and you will begin to see that holding your energy in that higher frequency is quite simple when you allow that wisdom to come to you. You are all on the right path, because where you are right now is where you need to be. Okay. That was the message from Edgar Cayce. his message, he was very focused on us being able to get the information, and not just in a physical book or something that he left behind, but he's saying, let's just tap into it. Let's meditate. Let's go to the Akashic Records in the library and let's get access to that information. We have that ability. Now, if you're not as attuned to your ability at this time, what you can do is gradually start to open that through meditations, but also you can connect to a practitioner who can do that. So that way you can start to receive it and do the healing, and then maybe eventually it will come to you more naturally, where it'll come to you more on your own, to where you're not needing all of that assistance. But he says, do use that though, because that is why we have practitioners doing that work, so that they can guide you a little and bring in that strength when you're feeling weakened at times. I want to thank you for joining me for this message with Edgar Cayce, and just bringing in all of his spiritual wisdom. If you would like to do a session with me, because I do a lot of hypnosis sessions, past life regressions, healing work, and I can also tap into what your spiritual purpose is, what guides are working with you, different things about your energy field. If you would like to work with me, you can go to pambarsh.com. The link is in the description below, or send me an email at info@pambarsh.com, and we can set up a session where we can start to work through that and see what your path is. And if you're feeling like you have a question about something in your life, it could be any area of your life, or if you want to know more about how to amplify your energy, clear things, heal things, we can work on that. I want to thank you for joining me, and I want to wish you much love and light on your journey. Have a great evening, day, afternoon, wherever you are. Thank you. Much love.